the meeting of the bylaws committee. The meeting of September 15th, 2021, call to order at 11 a.m. Present are Virginia Ahart, Christine Files, and Lucy Dalton, and myself, Francine Tishman. Okay, so with that, I see no comment unless any, okay, no one present.
It's very invisible.
What I did is I put at each of your places a packet of material that we're going to be going through today. So the first piece is the summary of September 8th meeting. It's the draft summary, so if you have a chance, I sent it to you right after the meeting. This is just to remember, refresh your memory. Take a look and let me know if you have any changes or corrections.
I think I think it was under section 5, when it said based on comments from another resident, the committee will consider changes to the nuisance piece and quiet after consultation with the police chief and fire chief. Was that going to be prior to our hearing though, our meeting, or that would be after the public meeting?
After.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, we're not going to make, because we have no way of getting any changes out to people, right. So they would be making changes on the, a document that.
So maybe just be clear, just to say after consultation with the police and fire chief at public meeting, or I don't know.
Okay.
Or after the public meeting.
After the public meeting.
And in consultation with, maybe, just to be clear, because we don't want to make any changes to them now before the public meeting, right?
Right.
So what did I just say?
After the public meeting and in consultation with the police and fire chief. Okay. 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 Do we have then?
Yeah. Make a motion to approve the minutes with that
minor correction. Okay, that's second. So Chris and Virginia. All right, all in favor? Thank you. Let me just comment on some of the things that are in here that I was supposed to do in the intro. Okay. So, I invited both fire chief and police chief, and they've accepted
for the meeting
to attend the meeting. And my thinking was that we should all sit up here. There are 5 of us, so 5 places there. I requested that the meeting be recorded and broadcast by Easthampton Media. Ed's working on that. We are going to try to use the screen. So Jen is going to send someone early and maybe someone can be with me, okay, to help, to teach me how we can project from here to here.
Okay. So you're going to project the bylaw as we're talking?
I'm thinking that we probably should. We won't make the changes there, but we could do it. We could do it there.
I think that screen moves.
Yeah.
It's on books and that has books over there.
Oh, that would be a good idea.
I don't know if you could have someone move it, but it has hooks on it.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
And there are hooks.
It's interesting.
Hooks up there too.
But then there's
heavy.
But then that's behind us. We wouldn't see it. And we would have to change the projector, which you probably can turn that as well. But
yeah,
I don't know if you want to
notice that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
But, well, we'll see when Jen, because I mean, we need to even use how to figure that out too.
Yeah.
Good Lord. With all this technology, and then they don't tell us what to do with it.
Yes, yeah, we do need to have that. Okay, I think those were the only things. Oh, and then I did send the draft dog and dog kennel bylaw to Nicole for review. We have not yet scheduled her for a meeting. We wanted to wait until we cleaned this whole thing up, complete the 3 that we're working on now, then invite her in and then get really moving on that one. So I think those were all the follow-ups that I had responsibility for based on these minutes. Okay. All right. I'm going to ask that we shift the agenda items around a little bit because I thought it was 11:15 that the East 360 rep would be here, but it's going to be 11:30.
Okay.
So we'll just hold off on that. So why don't we move then to the next agenda item, and I included them in your packet. If you look, the comments that we've received to date from individuals online about the bylaws that were posted.
What are responses?
No, we probably got about 8. And the deadline was over, so, I mean, that doesn't mean they still can't communicate. It just meant that I think it's less likely that we will hear from anyone. So I didn't have them in any particular order, but they're all in the same order for us. So if you start with, the first one would be from Jim Palermo, who was for a period of time on the bylaw committee. So he's talking about, and it's a good point that he raises. I have one question, and this is regard to soliciting and canvassing. Does the distribution of literature, periodicals, other printed material for commercial purposes apply to publications such as the Reminder or other similar publications that are not specifically requested by the resident and which are not sent through the U.S. Postal Service? Here, here's a Reminder, for example, has a commercial purpose. So that's a good point that he raises.
I mean, you can opt out if you don't want the reminder. You just contact them and say, don't deliver it to me.
Okay.
You have that option with the reminder.
Okay.
So people that have been annoyed at having them, thrown in their driveways, they've said repeatedly, here's the email or the number, and tell us and we will not do that.
But the question really is,
does it apply?
things like that, does it apply to them? So that would be some.
Are there other things like that happen? And then I'm trying to think of what else.
Not with any regularity, but that doesn't mean that someone can't just start. Right.
Yeah.
That's a good question. All right, the next comment then that I have, again, in no particular order, is from Mike O'Neill, who says, I believe this bylaw is long overdue. He's referencing
the noise one.
Yes, the noise one. However, the time frame needs to be adjusted from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. Anyone living near the gun range would go for this change. Okay, because our time right now is 10 p.m.
10 to 7.
10 to 7.
8 to 8.
Okay.
How does the gun range, can you hear it over on your road? No?
I can hear it in the
I hear it.
fall and winter when the leaves are off.
Okay.
You heard up on Glen. I certainly
I hear
heard
it. You hear it.
I've gotten used to it.
Yes. It's surprising when you first move in, especially if you had no idea that it existed.
Yeah.
So right now, and I guess I wonder too, how long, what's controlling the time over there now? Chief would know probably. Because do they go after dark? I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Too. So he's saying 8 o'clock. So it's 2 hours earlier than what we're proposing.
Right.
Is what he's saying. So I guess it would be good to know what now.
Okay.
What hours now?
For the gun range.
Yeah.
do they do all their shooting outside or some of it in?
I have never been there in my entire life of living in Southampton. I don't know.
I can find out.
Yeah, my brother used to go there for turkey shoots, but other than that, I can't tell you a thing about it.
Well, there are a lot of people that like recreation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, and it was, ski. you know, traffic and ski, what's it called? Ski.
Yeah, but it drove my dog crazy.
Yeah, no. Well, there's definitely people that live right nearby that.
If I didn't say it, we're being recorded.
Mhm.
Okay, so everyone knows.
Yep.
Okay, so again, the purpose of Tuesday is to just accept comments. It's not to debate them.
Right.
It's not to have more of a discussion. It's really to take in the information,
Right.
come back and have a discussion about what changes we would make. Okay, the next one is from Wayne Thoreau, who gave his address. And he raises a good point. No solicitation on any property that is posted, no trespassing, no solicitation. I mean, that's a given, okay?
Should be.
A sign-up list, if you want to be bothered by nuisance solicitation, sign up for it. That, I guess what he's recommending is that if you want to be solicited, that the list be for those who would accept it as opposed to those who don't want it. That's what I think he's saying. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I think so.
Okay, any violation is a major fine. I'm not sure I understand the next sentence at all, but it says to the Board of Selectmen, leave me alone, don't bother me with crap. Understand. Anyway, so bylaw number 2 has to do with noise and nuisance, and this is another good point. I work 16-hour shifts in public safety. I arrive home from work and the streets are not plowed. I want to plow my driveway and my neighbor gets upset. He can contact the police and file a grievance. So, you know, I know we listed exceptions for emergencies and so forth. I mean, I think snowstorms would be considered an exception for people in that situation, working late.
Yeah.
And the only time they have to do it is after they get home and before they leave the next morning.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, when we get there.
We might look at that as a possible
Yes,
rewording of the snow.
yes,
Snow
the
thing,
snow thing, yes. All right.
It could go, no, that would be noise. I was saying, we've got that other one on the, clearing of sidewalks or something, but that doesn't quite address the timing issue, so.
Right.
that-
Yeah,
it might be better in this
about
one.
noise because we put a time limit.
Right. It might be better in this one. So, yeah, we'd have to look at that as a possible exception. maybe.
So we'll mark that one for future discussion. And then we got a long, very well thought out one by Tina T. And, you know, who says it looks like a lot of work went into the bylaw revisions. She has a few comments. Nothing on soliciting. She thought it was fine. Nuisance and peace and quiet, I think that it's restrictive and way too specific regarding rights in a mostly rural community. I think the whole bylaw is not appropriate for a community of our size, and breach of peace laws already exist. I would like it scrapped. If it is kept, which I don't think it's necessary, I would absolutely 100% add in language that states within X feet of neighboring property for all of it as there is a big difference between my activities on a 10-acre parcel and those on a quarter-acre lot in a development. I mean, yes, that makes sense. If my neighbor has a motorcycle, they should be free to work on in their own yard as we are not close by, and it's their right as an American citizen. Outdoor entertainment makes everything an exception. Anyways, most of what residents do in their own yards is entertaining to them.
I guess that's true.
For example, you would need to remove entirely the section below, as it seems burdensome to police with calls for petty issues. The bylaws outlaw Christmas caroling, kids yelling hello at a classmate. Well, I didn't interpret any of what we wrote to mean that, but I think she's just giving examples of how extreme it could be. Yelling hello at a classmate while they ride bikes by and crying babies.
You're thinking that this is what people will consider the noise?
Noise, yes, yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think the idea behind that would be more if it's a continuous.
Yeah.
For a period of time. I mean, I get her examples, but I would say that would only be egregious if it, not only was loud, but it continued for
And I think we did specify in the
Thinking we
length
did.
of time that the noise would occur. But, I mean, yes, I mean, it would stand to reason that what you do in property that's pretty isolated versus property that's in a development would make, because your neighbors aren't there to hear or to be disturbed.
Yeah.
But anyway.
How you would put so she's recommending like adding a clause about number of feet away from your neighbor kind of thing?
Yeah, but, you could just jack it up the noise. So, I mean, the distances are going to make any difference in whether or not it disturbs people. So I don't know how, just think about that.
Yeah. And do we know about this breach of peace law? Is this an MGL?
It's probably an MGL. And we'll have to look that up. Okay, shouting, singing, or other loud noises on the public streets or with volume at any time or place as to annoy or disturb. This is what she's taking exception to. Disturb the reasonable quiet, comfort, or repose of persons in any type of residence or in any office or of any persons in the vicinity.
Okay.
That's pretty wordy. On our part. Okay.
Well, it doesn't address the continued noise for a long period of time or something. So that could be reworded, I'm sure. So.
Also, the numbering bylaw for houses seems specific and excessive. I would simply state each home or building must have an Arabic number of at least 3 inches and visible from X feet away. So I think, anyway, this number shall be posted at the entrance of the driveway of each residence within 3 feet of the roadway at the height of 2 to 4 feet. In the event of a multi-unit, the dwelling unit letters or numbers must also be affixed to or within 2 feet of the main entrance to each unit. I mean, that all sounds okay. What we did agree was changing the 6-inch letters numbers to 4. Okay.
She said at least 3.
So we will do 4.
Yeah.
We already we didn't make the change, but we discussed it among ourselves.
I think that's look at the 6-inch letter. Right. That's large. I was looking at my mailbox actually yesterday, and I definitely don't have the right height of my numbers here. So
one of the things, I mean, that this shows me is when I read these things along with other people's comments that maybe some of our language is
still too
stiff. Yeah, it needs to be, I think, a little simpler stated. Yeah. Anyway, we can talk about that. Then we have only 2 more to go. Debbie D'Amico. The exceptions to having a permit seem to include most, if not all, types of solicitations I receive. Why doesn't anyone solicit a permit or require a permit? Churches, charities, etc., should at least be required to register their activity. So we had given exemptions to religious, political, and youth organizations in our bylaw, and having to register. She's basically saying everybody should register, but those groups might be exempt from paying any fee.
Yeah, I mean, if the Girl Scouts go around and sell cookies, I mean, she's saying they should register with the police department. That's what she's saying.
But I don't think she covers youth. She said churches and charities,
etc. But in ours, we said charitable organizations, religious.
I mean, churches and charities are already MGL. I mean, that is, you can't do anything about that. But so it's not that they can't be prohibited from soliciting it, but what she's saying is that they should be at least registered with the police department. I think that's a question for Ian.
Yeah.
See what he thinks.
Yep. But again, the conversation, that discussion is not going to take place there.
No. But
We're just going to take everything and meet again.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's it. This is just I'm sorry. We didn't need 2 of these.
there was another one I saw. I got another one from the O'Donnells. The opposite.
Oh, yeah. Yes, no, I saw that one too. They're on College Highway. As you come down the hill, coming toward here.
Yeah.
They said something about, thank you, because we've lived here 30 years and.
Well, you just put up that wooden barrier about 2 years ago.
Are they, actually, I'm sorry, are they the ones right across from Grindstone? Or down the hill?
Down, they're down the
Yeah,
hill.
that's what I thought. Yeah, that's where I was
And
thinking.
they've been here forever.
Yeah, no, that's who I thought they were.
I had the kids in school.
Mhm. I went to school with one of them, I think that's all. Where was that now?
And it's,
Yeah.
what they're getting, one of the things that they're getting is the tractor trailers coming down and hitting that,
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of brake you call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the air brakes. Yeah, air brakes.
And screaming, and I'm sure the people on the other side by the golf course are saying the same thing. And then the tractor trailer going up is going to rev up in the very same place.
Can you send it to me? I don't have it. I went through.
Who would it come
It would have been forwarded by bylaw review.
from bylaw review?
Well, no, maybe not. No, you're saying O'Connor.
I did see that. And it was only about the noise one, if I remember.
It's, well, I'd like to do in the motorcycle, the kids with the motorcycle.
Yeah.
They were bad with the dirt bikes and now they've grown up. They come out of Fredbrook and they can't just come out and quietly rev up. They get from the road and it's no matter what time of the day or night. And I said something and they said, well, you should have lived nearer them when they were younger. Because it was dirt bikes then.
So would someone please forward that to me? Because
I can find it better on my phone probably.
I didn't get it.
I'll look and see where I got it.
So that was one other one, and I think we had, yeah, I think that was the only other one I saw.
And we did have one from Cindy Palmer saying, I'm not going to make any comments here. I'll attend the meeting and make them public. So I didn't bother.
Can she do that or no? She can make comments.
Yes, on that day is for that purpose. Yes.
Yeah.
But no debate.
No debate. Which is good.
Yeah.
Taking comments, yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because people, have different styles of making their points, but some of them are valid and that we should consider it. And I think this is a good thing we're doing.
Debating with each other, either in Johnny.
Right. Right.
It'll be a very long meeting.
Right. Because we will have a chance. I mean, again, I don't think we'll go forward with another public meeting, like version 2 of this. But whatever we finish up, we'll go to the select board.
I had to stop and think at the different views from where you live. Because one woman doesn't want any restrictions on noise. And people are waking up in the middle of the night. Yeah, but
There was one of them, a Terry Hoog.
oh, yeah.
To the group members, I've read the 3 documents. I'm in favor of all 3 bylaws that are being proposed. I think that all details were covered. Thanks for your time and energy. I'll forward Francine, if you didn't get it. No?
She's over on Hope Road.
So what I'm going to ask then is that,
I'll send it to you.
yes, would you? So when we start talking about the structure of our meeting, divide these up so that one person isn't doing all the talking.
Yeah.
Did say that we would
Well,
make everyone aware of all the comments, so you have to read them. Okay. All right, so I'm missing 2. I appreciate that. Okay.
Well, Carrie was just a reaffirmation, so I don't know that,
well,
I think it's good for people to hear that some people agree with us.
we're not just hanging out on the limb by ourselves.
I think she got some comments.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good that we can.
All right, it's 11:24.
Okay, why don't we get ourselves ready for whatever we have to do here? What are we doing?
We had the original proposal that they sent, and then the second set that I attached on the organizational analysis is we looked at the questions at our last meeting and thought we needed some clarification. Once we could make better decisions once we hear her presentation. And so that's why we put it off. But we only have until September 29th to complete the questions. And
Asked her if we could extend it, she'd probably be okay with it.
yeah, I'm not sure that would be necessary, but we'll see how today goes. In here is the completed section that was addressing the zoning bylaw that the ZBA completed at their last meeting last week. You'll see it in here.
Okay.
Zoning bylaws is part of this package that we're getting.
But most of the zoning bylaws, I understood, were being done by the planning board and PVPC. That's what I've understood all along, that they're working on a lot of the zoning bylaws at the planning board.
Yeah.
So is everything that they're working on and ZBA all get wrapped into this whole program? I thought we were just doing general bylaws.
We are just doing general bylaws, but their work is part of the contract.
Yeah.
So they'll,
Is zoning in there too?
yes, they will be working with them on that. I'm just saying that their responses are in here. That's not part of our responsibility. Okay. All right. Like I said, I had some questions about the questions. And the name of the person we're meeting with is
Deb
Ben
Kuzinski. She's the editor, and Caroline Yetto is the representative.
Caroline before, didn't you?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think they're both coming in.
I'll get a step up when we see what they. Start the video. So they'll see us for now. Good idea.
I could move over on the other corner. How's that? We do that. I don't think. I'll send you that email later.
Let me see if I can do something with that. And I mean, basically, she's going to be occupying the screen.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Well, people think we're watching. We did try to do this, Ed and I try to work this, but this is not hooked up. It's video, but the audio is not hooked up. So they're gonna have to come back and do that because it very clearly says there is no mic available.
Oh.
And we don't know about any of these others. Otherwise, that would have been great.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that didn't work. We're not, here she comes. This is from it, so I'm not gonna.
there we go.
Good morning. This is Deb from General Code.
Good morning. Deb, can you just angle your camera just a little bit?
Oh, sure. Sorry. Oop, now I'm way out. Went the wrong way. Ain't technology grand.
And I know you can't see all of us because we're working off of a laptop, but it's
That's
really
okay.
more we see you than you see us.
I can't lower the camera, so I'm afraid you're going to have kind of my eyes up. So sorry about that.
Okay. All right. Anyway, my name's Francine Tishman, and with me is Chris Files, Virginia Ahart, and Lucy Dalton. I believe you already know.
Hi, Deb.
Hi there.
So we would appreciate, just kind of an overview from you. And then we have the package that was sent to us with questions, and we may have a couple questions about the questions, but I see no reason that we can't complete the document and get it back to you.
Okay. I think Carolyn's coming in, so I'll just give her a second to come in.
Oh, good.
So when you said you'd like an overview, could you give me something a little bit more specific, like of the steps in the project, or just a little bit clear on what information you're looking for?
The steps in the project, I read here that from the time we complete this, it will take 180 days, up to 180 days to see, I guess, the first iteration of this. So, I mean, just walk us through going forward.
Sure,
How you
sure.
want the material from us, how it gets handled and managed, and then expectations on the other end about completion and so forth. And then
Sure.
I don't want to speak for everyone. Chris, do you have any?
No, let's just start out and we may have questions as we go along.
Yeah. Virginia? Okay, let's see. Everybody's good.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hi there.
Hi, Carolyn. Okay, so we have the agreement with the town to prepare basically a codification of your general bylaws, your zoning bylaw, and the one groundwater regulation. So we received copies of the materials. We downloaded them from your website to start the project. And I documented it in the report, I believe, when we downloaded them to just indicate one of the things we're trying to do at this stage with this step of the project is to make sure we have the correct materials. We don't want to be in a situation, because I've had this happen, where we start and we downloaded something from the website or the clerk emailed us something and we go ahead and we use that as the basis for the code, to what's included in the code. And when we submit the first draft, suddenly I get a frantic call or an email saying, wait, we sent you the wrong thing, or you have the wrong version of this. So that's one of the reasons for this organizational analysis step, is we spell out in the report, this is what we have. Is it the current version? Is it the most up to date? Are there amendments that need to be accounted for? So that's one of the main things we're trying to address with this step, is do we have the right materials? So we're making sure we're using the right documents to create this new codification of your general bylaws and zoning bylaw and the regulations. Question?
This is a work in progress. And so, some of the bylaws we have not touched yet. And the others, are either either under consideration or have already been approved, the changes. So which do you want to work with? And some of the older bylaws we haven't touched yet, and they're probably another, 10, 12? Are you going to codify those as well up until we make changes?
Okay, let me kind of walk through the whole process. I think that might answer your question a little bit. So for starters, we're only working with bylaws that have actually been adopted. If you have things that are in process right now and haven't been passed yet, or have been passed but haven't gotten Attorney General approval, we're not going to incorporate those until they've actually gone through that whole approval process. In terms of things, so the code project can take a couple of years to complete. And we understand that, you're not static while that's happening. You're passing additional laws, and we understand that, and we'll incorporate them as we go. So there's kind of two tracks happening here. There's your existing bylaws and any amendments that are in process right now. Plus there might be amendments that you identify need to be made as part of this review that we're going to do of the bylaws. And I'll explain a little bit about how those changes can be made. So basically what we're doing at this point, as I said, is we're making sure we have the right materials and we're reaching agreement of what's going to be in this codification, at least to start with. And so what I do is I do an initial review. I haven't read word for word yet. That's going to come in the next phase. But I took a first look through your zoning bylaw, through your general bylaws, to see if I had any just questions off the bat of, anything that I saw. Like, I believe that you have two different general bylaws that talk about non-criminal disposition. So I asked a question in the report about that. Is one of them older and superseded? Are they supposed to be merged? Like, so I just did a kind of an initial review, quick pass to say what jumps out at me as something we might want to have to address in terms of just putting together this first draft of the bylaw codification. The other big piece of this step is the organization. I submitted the proposed table of contents in terms of how we propose to take your general bylaws and reorganize them with this new codification, and also with the zoning bylaw included there as well. And I'm happy to talk more in depth about our system in terms of, how that's set up. What we're looking for back from the town right now is just a response to those questions in the organizational analysis, an approval of how we are proposing to organize it. Because what's going to happen with the next step is when we get that approved table of contents back, what we'll do is we will start processing the materials. We'll take them, we'll input them into our system and put them into that new organizational original scheme that we've proposed. And I want to be really clear that we don't make any changes to the text of the laws at this point in the process. All we're looking at right now is the organization and the numbering to sort of create this rough draft or this manuscript that then we're going to work off of as we go forward. After the manuscript is created, I'm going to read through it. This will be a more in-depth read through of the materials of all the bylaws, the zoning bylaw. And I'm going to give you a report, which we call an editorial legal analysis. So when I read through the bylaws, what I'm looking for are there inconsistencies between the bylaws? Are there conflicts between something that's the zoning bylaw says and the general bylaw says, or between two different general bylaws? That can happen over time. You'll have one general bylaw that was adopted, say, in the 80s, and you adopt a new one or a zoning amendment in the 2000s, and there's actually a conflict between the requirements in those two pieces of legislation. So it's a review for conflicts and inconsistencies internal to your legislation. It's also a review against state law, against the Massachusetts general laws. So we look up all the references, we review the text against the general laws. We track every single act that's passed in Massachusetts for any potential impacts on local legislation. So we're very familiar with the statutes and new acts. So we look for anything that, where that usually falls is you might have something in your general bylaws or zoning that's based on something that was in the statute, and the statute has since changed. They changed a time frame that a permit has to be issued by or something like that. So we want to make sure your zoning bylaw and your general bylaws are still consistent with statutory requirements. So that's the next phase of the project. What you will get then, and that's where the reference to the 180 days, when we get the analysis back, we have a certain time frame to get everything into our system, create this rough draft of the codification, and for me to read it and prepare this report for you. And then what you will get is the rough draft, we call it the manuscript of this new codification that has your existing general bylaws and zoning bylaw and the groundwater regulation, just in the new numbering. Right, as I said, no changes to the wording at this point. And then with that is my report that I've gone through chapter by chapter with things you might want to take a look at. And then the ball will kind of be back in the town's court, and you have an opportunity then to read my report, look at the manuscript, and decide what, if any, substantive changes, actual changes to the text of the bylaws that you want to make as part of this project. And you can, there's kind of twofold thing. What a lot of people do is they just get our report, they go through it, they answer the questions. What some other communities I've worked with do is they kind of use that as just a starting point. And so they'll review my questions, but they'll also go through and they'll read the bylaws line for line, and they'll submit additional additional revisions above and beyond the things that I've pointed out. Because remember, I have kind of a higher level perspective. I'm just looking at what the law says in terms of the statutes, but there might be something in your general bylaws that I won't recognize as being outdated, but you will. You'll look at it, it'll say that a particular license or permit is issued by the clerk. As far as I know, that's, there's nothing wrong with that. There's no conflict with anything else. But you might look at that and say, well, actually, that's not our current procedure. That permit is issued by someone else. And so that will be an area where you'll know a revision is needed that wouldn't necessarily be obvious to me. So the idea here is I take my pass through it. I submit the questions to you based on my experience with other Massachusetts towns and just reading the whole volume of the legislation. And then you can do as in-depth a review as you choose to. Like I said, some places just read our report and answer the questions. Other places use the report and then also do their own really in-depth review of the material and submit additional revisions. So basically, that comes back to us, all your decisions, all your requests of what we're going to revise. We incorporate that. We give you an additional draft. It's called a preliminary draft that shows those changes so you can look through it and make sure everything was incorporated correctly. We usually have some follow-up questions. We might need clarification on some changes that you've submitted. And then we submit a final draft. And then, of course, because we're talking about changes to the bylaw, everything has to go to town meeting. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can either, and there is an explanation of this in the report. Some places choose to do a complete repeal and replace of their general bylaws or their zoning bylaw. The old one goes out, you're adopting a whole new set of general bylaws or a whole new zoning bylaw. More frequently, in my experience, what towns choose to do is they'll do basically a 2 warrant article approach. There will be an article to accept the renumbering. That's all it does. And then there'll be an article to make any specific substantive changes that the town has decided to do. So there's 2 articles for the general and 2 articles for zoning. And that second article basically lists chapter by chapter, these are the revisions that we're making. And then that final draft and those warrant articles are what gets submitted to town meeting for approval, to basically approve the codification at the end. So we do have a mechanism for those changes to be made if you decide you want to make substantive changes to the bylaws as part of this process. And I actually just yesterday got Attorney General approval for another town that I'm working with, the town of Upton. Just finished this whole process. They adopted they adopted those articles at their town meeting in May of this year. We've just been waiting for Attorney General approval, which came in on the 10th. So we just wrapped their code up for delivery. So if you're interested, if you'd like to see an example of what this all looks like, after this meeting, I'm happy to forward an email with the links to the town's website where their warrant for the annual town meeting is posted, and a copy of the Attorney General letter. So you can see, kind of have more of a visual of what this looks like.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of information. Let me just pause here and see if anyone has any questions.
I was gonna say that the language for the warrant article would be great. I think that's part of our challenge now when we present these to town meeting. We've been led to believe, at least, that we have to show the old text, and then we've been bold facing the new text to show what we're replacing, modifying, and it gets to be so confusing. It's impossible for anybody to really read and make this a user-friendly process. So if there's a way to kind of globally make changes to bylaws that is more easily understood at a town meeting, that's probably something we would be very interested in, I would think.
That's interesting. I am not aware of any kind of statutory requirement that that's how amendments have to be presented, unless it's something the town has passed, that this is how we're going to do our bylaws. I see lots of...
We were told that was how we had to present it to the Attorney General as well.
Well, that's interesting. Because like I said, we've been doing this way for years and have never had any kind of pushback from the Attorney General.
It's a lot easier.
We'll do something easier. So one other thing, I think you do have, been noting here, you've taken the bylaws that are on our website from 5 through, I'm just talking the general bylaws. We have, this committee does nothing to do with the zoning bylaws. We're just the
Understood.
general bylaws committee. So the ones from 5/3/2021 is what's up on our website right now, which is correct. The one thing that we have done for the working ability of our committee, if it would help you, we have an Excel sheet that lists all the ones that have been completed and passed through the AG. And then we have a section of ones that are on the website that we haven't worked on yet, that we want to work on. And then we have another section of maybe 3 or 4 new ones that don't exist at all yet.
Okay.
So that would be helpful, just to, in addition to this, just to help you sort out what we know are already approved by the AG. And we've got a couple pending in front of the AG, which we're hoping to hear from very soon. If that would help, I can, send that along to you as well.
Sure. Any information is helpful. And also something I didn't mention is when we prepare this codification, this manuscript, we will retain any historical information. So it will show any information that we have that's in that book. So you will have the record of when that thing was originally, it will say, if we have the information, if it's in your existing compilation or if it's in the spreadsheet that you provide, it will say, adopted 1979. We carry that information over so it's not lost, any information that we have.
Yeah, I think that's great. Just keeping us, organized and sharing that, just having everybody know when we're on first or second base at this point in time with some of these. That's good. Thank you.
Deb, would you be able to send a link to of Upton so we can see how the articles are written?
Yes, absolutely. What I can do is, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Why don't you finish?
No, it's okay. No, go ahead. I'll ask you this question. Go ahead.
So what I'll do is I will send you the copies, the Word documents that we sent them, that we prepared for them. So what happens
Okay.
a lot of times is we create the articles that just has all the information. And depending on how many changes you make, it can be a really long list of changes. So what Upton chose to do is for the actual warrant itself, they revised the article to just refer to the changes on file with the clerk. And then the clerk posted them separately on their website. So what I'll do is I'll send you the original documents that I sent them, and then I'll send you the link to the website, and you can see exactly what the clerk posted in terms of what was actually written in the warrant that was published and how they presented the changes. I've also seen it done as a handout. I've seen the article written as we're adopting these changes as shown in the handout, and the revisions are moved to a separate handout that's then passed around at town meeting for members. So there's a couple different, we're going to provide you with all the information, but however you normally would, present information to town meeting, feel free to do that. So I will definitely, as soon as we're done with this call, unless you want me to do it right now, so while you're all together.
So you can wait until.
So do you have this? Do you have the packet in front of you? The codification? I do. So on page 3, I'm just going to start with, and if you guys don't mind, the first question with A is, based on this blah, blah, blah. The decision, we would just hit other because we haven't heard from them yet, but we're supposed to hear from them by next week. So would we wait to fill that in?
No, that's okay. You can just, since you don't even have to check anything, since you just told me that you're just still waiting for that, that's fine.
We have until September 21st to do for their decision. So, okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
And maybe we'll know that because this one is due back to you by the 29th, right?
Right. So I could,
that would give us
We can wait.
Right.
That would give us a chance if we hear back from the AG on the 21st.
Right, just to say, to check that.
Yeah, that will time out fine because by the time this gets back, what I'll do is review it, and then it takes us a while to process the materials to actually get into our system, and especially if I know that there's some approval pending, we'll make sure we get that material before we actually start processing everything.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, what we need to do is go through, or you guys, whatever, go through the articles, the bylaws, go through the articles and see, and then do this check off, like 2 different bylaws. Go ahead, sorry.
Can I ask you a question about
Sure.
The process here? We draft the material. Would you advise us to send it to you before we send it to our select board and then our town attorney?
Are you talking about things you're working on now, or the materials that we're submitting?
We're working on now.
Yeah, working on now.
Like I said, there's kind of 2 tracks here. If you have stuff that's in process, you can continue on with that. We don't really want to incorporate into the code until it's adopted, unless your other option here is for things that you have in process, like you're reviewing bylaws right now and you're looking at making some amendments. The other option you have is to just fold it into this process and say, well, we're going to pass this change along to general code and have them put it in this draft of the new bylaws, and we'll adopt it as part of the larger approval of the codification. The only, what I would say is it depends on how fast you want it to be done. If this is something that you want to get to your next town meeting, if you're going to have a fall town meeting or an annual next year, I would continue on the track you're going on and submit it for whatever approval you need to get to that town meeting, because this project, we're not going to be done in time for your annual next year. It might potentially be ready for a fall meeting next year, but it's more likely going to be the annual the following year. So I would just sort of consider how fast you want something to be done, whether you want to keep doing it separately and just add it to the project. We can add it to the code when it's done and adopted, or if you want to pass it along to us and have us do the changes part of this project. But just keep in mind, we're at the very early stages of this project, and it's usually about a two year thing. So we're a ways away from getting to the point where something would be passed. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so just not send anything that we are reviewing right now, don't send to you to look at and review as well. That's what the question was if we're working on stuff would it be possible to send you all something to look at to
Before we move it along.
move it on to select board?
Sure, if you want me to take a look at it just to sort of read through it and give you an opinion on it, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, okay,
Okay,
perfect.
that's good. Thank you.
Thank
But
you.
I wouldn't,
All right.
yeah, just to clarify, I'm happy to review anything. I just wouldn't make that part of the code we're preparing. If it's something
No.
you're planning to adopt separately, we'll wait until it actually gets through that process.
Right, okay, but we can send you something to review.
Yes.
Sure.
You could give us our,
An opinion.
okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Question.
Were there any questions about the code organization, the way the bylaws were presented in terms of the organization, the alphabetical order and the parts?
Yeah, I guess, having them, it's hard for me to track with not going from 1 to 100, in numerical order, because now I have to go back and kind of cross check, which is
Yep.
what, like the first, it says general provisions, and then the select board is all the way back, on,
82,
yeah,
chapter 82.
yeah, chapter 82. So I'm just, and I think you'll see what our organizational structure is when Chris sends you that spreadsheet, because we've already outlined, in numerical order, the articles in the sequence that we think makes sense for users of our bylaw.
But we haven't broken them up into
No.
category like you have here. We don't have them as administrative and regulatory. And I guess that's my question. That's kind of a standard boilerplate for the system?
Yeah, so the way we kind of think of in terms of organizing the general bylaws is there is the split of administrative versus regulatory. The administrative bylaws have to do with creating positions, boards, departments, things that are really internal to the working of the town government. The regulatory bylaws would be bylaws that basically affect the general public, and bylaws that are going to contain penalties. An administrative bylaw doesn't typically contain a penalty. So that's the distinction between the two parts. And then within the parts, they're really just in alphabetical order by title. And the reason for that is that's a very basic system that's very easily recognizable for code users, especially people outside of the town government who are just citizens, who, just are looking for animals or, something about junkyards. It's a very easily recognizable system that the chapters are in alphabetical order by subject. And then the numbering, a lot of people ask about the numbering because it seems like, how do we suddenly have 200 chapters? We don't have that many bylaws, and why aren't the numbers consecutive? And that's because of the alphabetical order. They're staggered. The idea is, this is not going to be a static document. You're going to adopt new bylaws. We have to add new things. And in order to have room to put something in the right alphabetical order, you need to have some reserved numbers between every chapter so that if we have to put something in between two chapters, we can just pick basically the numbers that you don't see are reserved chapters. And then, so we have those numbers available to add something in the proper alphabetical order if need be. So that's very generally kind of our approach to the organization, and also just making each piece, a really discrete subject specific piece of legislation, not lumping a whole bunch of things together in one big chapter that then it becomes hard to find some. We try to look at each bylaw and think logically, is this related to any other bylaws that it should be grouped with? But we also want to kind of retain the integrity of the original. The other thing too, I just want to point out, and it's in the report, but just to be clear, you will get a parallel table that lists the old numbering and the conversion. So if you say, I know this used to be Article 5, where did that go? There will be a table in the book that you can look at for Article 5, and it will show you where it went. And actually, it will be a live link in the online code. You can just click on it and jump right to that.
Yeah.
But if you're not happy with this organization, if you'd rather have the general bylaws organized a different way, I'm happy to work with you to sort that out.
So we would answer that question on page 8, please call to discuss, or how request changes to proposed code as shown on each copy. And then we would include how we wanted it organized. Is that?
Yes, if you want something else, you just have to give me direction as to exactly how you want the things presented.
Okay.
And I may, you know, the other thing here too is we have to be, it's not just about what we're creating now. It has to be able to be supplemented. It has to be a system that lends its, first of all, it has to be able to be indexed. It has to we have to make sure that our system requires that basically every single piece of legislation has a discrete number, because that's what allows the indexing function to happen. And it allows sections to be identified. Each one has to have a unique number. So there are some, you know, we have some flexibility, but we want to make sure that it's a good system and a flexible system that, you know, anyone using the code is going to recognize, be able to find things, and that it's going to be flexible enough to add things easily going forward. So just, you know, and I've had a lot of experience with this. I've been doing this for 30 years. And I've worked on many, many, many codes. And so I've seen all kinds of different systems, and, you know, I have yet to see the perfect system. There's always kind of drawbacks with anything you do. We do feel very strongly that our system works well. But if you really want it to be another way, I'm happy, like I said, to work through with you on that. You just want to really keep in mind who the users of the code are going to be in terms of being able to find things. I had another town a couple of years ago that really wanted to organize the bylaws based on which department administered them. So they would have, instead of having chapters, they would have department divisions, and then the bylaws were going to be under the department. And they ran into trouble because in some cases, more than one department was involved in administering a particular bylaw, or people weren't sure which department was supposed to be administering a bylaw. And then the question came up like, well, this is great if you're really familiar with the organization of the town government and you know, which department does what. But if you're just an average citizen who doesn't have that knowledge, you don't know what department to look under to find what you're looking for. So I think after some back and forth, they finally kind of came around and said, yeah, let's just go with how general code presented it. So just, I have, like I said, I have a lot of experience. I'm happy to work with you to sort this out, but there are some considerations around, how we want to structure it. The last thing I'll say about the organization is, we really, over the last several years, have moved away from a paper-based view of materials to an online view. And in the online world, people look for stuff by searching. They're not going to go through it really necessarily an index or a table of contents. If I'm new to the town and I want to know if I need a dog license or what the fee is, I'm going to go to your online code and I'm going to go to the search box and type in dog license. That's how I'm going to look for stuff. So we don't want to get too hung up on the organization, if that makes sense, because really we're moving more towards that online environment and people looking for things by searching.
It's also helpful for when people are wanting to move into town, because they'll call and say, what is your bylaw for dogs? What is it? So they'll look at our bylaws even before they move into town because they want to know what they're all about. So
and I appreciate your leaving room for expansion here too. We tried to do that too. We had to add in, you'll see on the chart that I sent you, I've got an old number and a new number because we added one in for, I think it was the town administrator, and that threw off our numbering immediately. And then there's a couple we want to delete because they're irrelevant. And so we were kind of reserving numbers and we were getting ourselves in a bubble. At least I was. But yeah, that will be helpful, I'm sure. All right. So basically our task is to go through and try to answer these questions as best we can, huh?
Right, and if off this to Lucy and you'll forward this.
Yeah, I'll click, because it's online, so I can just put them on.
Deb, you were going to say something?
No, I think I just lost my track, and then I realized I was interrupting someone, so I'm sorry about that. No, are there any other questions about the materials or the process?
Anything more? No, I think.
No. You said, Deb, this is a couple year process.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really a couple years or does it happen anytime sooner than like 2023 that we'll get a final?
Well, it really depends on, a lot is going to depend on you guys, because, we're going to submit that editorial and legal. What typically happens is, when you send the analysis back, we will get it turned around as quickly as we can. It will take us a couple months just because of the logistics of getting everything into our system and scheduling. My time, like I can tell you right now, I'm pretty much booked through December. So if, you return this month and we start processing, I'm probably going to be working on your analysis in January. That's probably the time, somewhere in early next year. That's when you can expect to receive the materials. Once you get that, you have quite a lengthy time period to review the questions. And my typical experience with this is a lot of places find that they need even more time than we give them under the contract. They ask for extensions because they're still working through it. Depending on how quickly you go through that, it's probably going to take you at least a few months. So let's say, for the sake of argument, I don't know if this will be the case. Let's say we submit the analysis and the manuscript for your review in January. You finish in, say, March or April of next year. We still have to then go through and put your revisions in, provide the first draft, you review it, and then we're ready to provide the final draft in the warrant article. So like I said, if things move really quickly and you have a fall meeting next year, it could potentially be ready for a fall meeting next year. I don't know if you typically do special meetings in the fall or not. If not, then, we could be done. I actually have a project that's done right now, but their next town meeting isn't until next May. So we're going to sit for however many months that is until they adopt, and then we're going to have to wait 3 months after that for the Attorney General to approve. So there's a lot of the time frame isn't so much that it takes so long for us to do it or you to do it. It's the waiting for the next meeting and waiting for the Attorney General to approve.
Right. And oftentimes we would have a special town meeting in the winter, so like February, for example.
Right. We could do, we could possibly be ready for that, but realistically, from where we are right now, I would be surprised if this gets done next year. I think you're probably looking at 2023, but who knows? If you guys turn it around really fast, maybe we can. Like I said, I really an annual meeting next year in spring or early summer is probably not realistic, given the amount of work that still needs to be done. But a special later in the year, possible.
Well, I mean, it's about timing too. I mean, we have our annual town meeting in May, so we have a special town meeting sometime in the winter, but it's about timing, we have to end submitting the stuff to
right. And we have to be done in time. We have to coordinate with the warrant. We have to have our work done in time to get you the information to put it in the warrant. For the zoning bylaw, there needs to be hearings. So there's a lot of logistics involved that contribute to the time frame being so long, unfortunately.
Two questions. You mentioned having the warrant articles in pairs. And again, I'm just focusing on the general bylaws. Would it ever be possible to do just one of the articles on the numbering change first, like for the May town meeting, and then nothing in terms of the content stuff until the fall, as you're suggesting? Is that a good idea?
That's interesting. I suppose it's possible. I've never had anyone do it that way. I mean, you could, it's usually, it's part of a package. We're creating this codification, and what's being adopted is the codification. And it's like in non-town meeting situations, if we're working with a town council or a city, we would do a single ordinance and the ordinance would do everything. But town meetings don't work that way. We have to do, you could theoretically do a single warrant article that does both, but we tend to break it out just in case there's a problem with either one. Let me give that some more thought. I mean, if you wanted to, if you were fine with the renumbering and you wanted to go ahead and approve that and make it available that this is now our set of general bylaws next year, that's possible. Like I said, let me think about it a little bit more to see if there's anything, that would, maybe make that not work.
The idea of, a separate one, just outlining the new structure that we're putting in place, kind of setting the table for, the content that's going to follow.
That was my thought. I think I don't know. We can certainly have time to talk about this, but my thought would be that would help show the residents too, the progress that's being made on this. I mean, they voted to have this system, you know, they've been hearing us drone on about bylaws for years. And so if we can show some real progress, that might be helpful. My second question, and maybe you answered this somewhere along the way, as you know, I'm sure we have our town council in Boston, and everything that we do here and pass through the select board then goes on to town council before coming onto the warrant. So based on your experience, what level of legal review do you all provide that may make our work with our town council less extensive in their review? Do you kind of balance each other? I assume you don't replace them, but.
No, that's a good question. I don't think I brought that up before, and I'm glad you asked that question. So we do not replace your town council. And what we do, you'll see when we submit the editorial legal analysis, we recommend that when you make decisions and when you're deciding to make revisions to the bylaws, we always recommend that you submit that for the council to review before it comes back to us. So we can't, General Code is a codification company, we are not a law firm. So I can't provide you with legal advice. Now, I have 30 years of experience of reading Massachusetts laws and reading the Massachusetts statutes. I'm very familiar with those things, and I can point out things. But I can't give you legal advice because we are not a law firm. So what you'll see sometimes, and sometimes I will look at something and say, well, this seems like it's inconsistent with the statute, but we're getting into an area then where this requires a legal opinion. And so I will phrase that, you'll see the question analysis that says, I will actually say to you, this is something you definitely need to have your attorney look at. A lot of times it's very straightforward. Your section says you have to, act on this application in 30 days, and the statute changed and says it now has to be 65 days. It's a very straightforward, change this to this. Other situations, it becomes a little bit, you've got this bylaw that restricts someone putting up signs in parks, and I will say, that seems to me like a free speech potential violation, but I can't give you an opinion on that. So I'm going to say, this is what this seems like to me. You might want to have your lawyer take a look, your attorney take a look at this and see if they think a revision is needed here. We're giving you as much information as we can based on my reading of the materials and my experience and reading of the statutes. But the final kind of word in terms of a legal opinion or kind of signing off on the changes is definitely still something you're going to want to go through your counsel for. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I'm hoping that if we're closer to what it should be, that it will take them less time.
Yeah.
Theoretically, yes.
Yeah, we're hoping we'll have a cleaner draft, I guess, to give them where we haven't quoted the wrong MGL or something.
Yeah.
Right. I can tell you a lot of times, I'll get the revisions back and maybe a few additional things from the council's review, but it's usually not extensive.
Good. Okay. All right, good. I don't know.
I feel like I need a booster seat to lift myself up so you can see. That's the only place I can put the camera, and I feel like I should have a cushion under me or something, like I'm a little kid, so you can see my whole face.
You just grew about 3 inches. So.
Sorry about that. I should lift my chair up or something. It's like Kilroy. Kilroy was here.
Anything you want to add to this discussion?
Caroline, you want to speak?
No, I knew that Deb was going to be the one to really help you through this process. I love hopping on though, because every time I'm in one of these conversations, I learn more. So thanks for including me, and always, Lucy, if you have questions, reach out, and we'll go from there. I'll be hopping in, once you get to that code review process, I'll be hopping in on that meeting as well when we get to that point.
Oh yeah, let me, I'll just explain that a little bit while we're here. So when we submit the manuscript and editorial legal analysis, it will actually be submitted online. We're going to set up a site for you. It's called a code review site. It's a website rather than submitting paper materials. And basically everything related to the project will be posted on that site. So we'll do another session like this with our trainer, Jeannie Sanders. It's wonderful. And what she'll do is she'll show you all the bells and whistles of the sites. It's basically your e-code, your online code. It's just in a private form because I kind of refer to it as the construction site. It's the construction site where we're building your new codification. So everything will be posted there, and then from there you'll be able to download and print and do all kinds of things in terms of reviewing the materials. But just so you know what to expect, it actually won't be hard copies. It will be a link to a site, and then we'll do another training session like this to get you familiar with using the site and downloading materials from the site. So it's very, very cool, and it will get you familiar with how to use the online code because it's very similar to your online code.
Good. And we're going to certainly try to get this questionnaire done by the 29th. If we needed an extra week, is that possible?
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
If you only need one extra week, that will be excellent because a lot of places, it takes a lot longer than that.
We won't hear from you till like January anyway, so yeah.
And yes, and we want to make sure that if we're, for whatever reason, that the Attorney General's response is a little bit delayed, that, we're just not, giving you mixed signals. Give it to you one way one time and another way the next time. So.
Right, appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you need a little bit more time, that's not a problem.
When we do get the response from the Attorney General, do we send you we'll send you the updated information, right?
Well, what we need for anything that was passed, I think this is, there was some things passed at the last town meeting. So basically I need is I need a copy of what was adopted, which can be the warrant, but make sure whatever was adopted was spread in the warrant. If it's not, because sometimes I'll get the warrant article, it'll say, as shown on the file on file with the clerk's office. And I'm like, well, all I have is the article. So make sure whatever was passed, I actually have a copy of. And I do like to get the Attorney General letters. Once in a while they disapprove some wording. So we want to make sure we account for that. But even if they don't, I like to have the letters just to verify that it went all the way through the process. Yeah. So I just need a copy of, and I need to know the date. So it's helpful if you send the warrant, send the Attorney General approval. But if the material wasn't actually spread in the warrant, I just need a copy of what was passed.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. All right.
Any more questions, anyone? This was really helpful.
Good.
Thank you.
It was very nice to meet you all. I look forward to seeing you all again at the next session.
Okay.
I'll try to get a booster seat before that.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Bye.
Thanks all. I will email you that information from Upton so you can see what their code adoption look like.
Okay.
And I'll forward that Excel spreadsheet I talked about via Lucy.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Thanks very much, ladies.
All right.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Bye, Caroline.
Bye.
Bye.